So I would like to say thank you to everybody who's joined this session. We have 73 people online, which is fantastic. Most of you know me, some of you don't, so I'm just going to say hello and that my name is John Watkin. I am the CEO of the SaharaConservation, as is. I am thrilled to be able to present the new 2025 strategic plan for the organization. This document and the thinking behind it is the result of a significant amount of work, both by our team members in the field, the team in Paris, but also from the board. They have put an incredible amount of effort into making this plan viable and relevant, and making sure that it builds upon the previous strategic plan, which was from 2018 to 2020. Of course, a lot of the planning activities were compromised because of COVID, and we are all aware of the impacts that has had. But overall, I'm very proud of what we've managed to achieve with this. One of the things that we have also done is we're also evolving. We've had a small change in name to now just the SaharaConservation, and a change in the logo to face right, and an improvement in the fonts used in the name, so that it is more clear and more easily used in terms of branding and marketing the organization as a whole. Again, this is a very slight shift, but it has made a big impact on people who've known of the Sahara Conservation Fund since its founding in 2004. Just to go over the region that we're talking about to make sure everybody's clear, the Sahara is the largest desert on Earth. It spans the equivalent of continental USA or China. It's a highly seasonal and a very low rainfall system. The Sahel is an Arabic word for shore. The grasslands that surround the Sahara, which is a sea of sand. And I think it's very interesting to maintain that metaphor for how it goes. One of the worst things that I've always said is that calling it a desert is not the most wonderful approach, because it's not deserted at all, but it has uniquely adapted biodiversity on all levels, from plants and animals of all taxa, to cope with the extreme conditions, the heat and the cool and the highly seasonal rainfall. It also has many endemic threatened species. For that, we always defer to the IUCN Red List. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that the Red List is often out of date or behind on the most recent data. And that's something that we discovered when we looked at trying to identify key biodiversity areas from available data. It's a challenging aspect in all aspects. It's a challenging region from all aspects, and we can go more into that as we go forward. But for all of us who work in the region, it is also magical. It is a very special place, and the conservation priorities there are as important as anywhere else. As I said, we are evolving. We have managed to put together this beautiful strategic plan for up to the year 2025. That has also been accompanied by a change in the organization name, a refreshed logo. But also internally, we've looked at improving our financial management and procurement systems. We've recruited new board members to help advise SaharaConservation on the way forward and how to take advantage of new opportunities as they arise. We have new team members both in the Paris office and on the field projects, and that has been revolutionary for the organization, bringing on board new skills, new talents, and new perspectives. And we are now a very solid team that I really feel we collaborate extremely effectively at all levels, and that's resulted in us having a much more enhanced delivery of field projects, which is where our focus is and always has been. The office in Paris would be nothing without the fieldwork that's undertaken and by our extremely dedicated teams in Chad and Niger initially, but also with our work in Morocco through partners. So there's not a fundamental shift in the strategic plan in terms of the vision and the mission. The Sahara Conservation is still set out to try and maintain a system where ecological processes function naturally, with plants and animals existing in healthy numbers across the historical range, benefiting all its inhabitants, and where support for conservation outcomes comes from stakeholders across all sectors of society. We need to improve how we communicate about the Sahara and where the conservation priorities are and how to tackle those. We can't do that alone. And one of the strengths is the Sahara and Sahel interest group and the technical support that we receive from that. Our mission is to conserve wildlife, habitats, and natural resources of the Sahara and its bordering Sahelian grasslands to the benefit of all people and wildlife. And that's very much at our core, that we need to make sure that the pastoralist peoples that have been living in these habitats for millennia are still able to pursue their lifestyles and move forward. To achieve this, we've developed a 3-pillar approach. And this is starting with championing Saharan biodiversity. And we need to be basically the flag bearer for the region and make sure that the Sahara and the Sahel are not neglected as one of the main key biomes globally, and all of the conservation priorities, but also the path to sustainable development. That can be achieved through landscape conservation and making sure that the priority landscapes for species, whether they be plants and animals or for migratory species traveling through, are actually maintain space well into the future, ideally in perpetuity, to be able to continue their ecological processes and life systems. That will then result in species conservation. If we can protect the landscapes that are vital, then we'll help the species that have both been reintroduced and reinforced, but also the species that are still there to thrive. And that's what the word that I think we need to focus on, is making sure that these species can thrive. We do that by helping to provide technical assistance to further reintroduction and rewilding projects. There's a considerable interest in repeating some of the successes that SaharaConservation has had, but also learn from other projects and start reintroducing some of the key species back to new areas. We want to reinforce and existing and develop new partnerships for conservation action. As I said at the start, none of us can do this alone. And that applies at all levels, whether that be donors, government partners, partners on the ground, and community conservation groups that we need to bring on board to achieve true action and have a sustainable way forward. There's a vital need to raise awareness and funds for the conservation of the Sahara and the Sahel. It's desperate times now. I think everybody's aware how close we are to achieving and going past the 1.5 degrees Celsius climate envelope that has been proposed as the threshold for trying to mitigate detrimental climate change. There are ties. All of us have ties to the Sahara. As I mentioned yesterday, the pickup of sand coming over Europe, and also the phosphates going across to the Amazon. But we also all rely on products from the Sahara. Whenever you drink a soda and you've got gum arabic in it, that is harvested from trees within the region. And to try and make people aware that the Sahara is contributing to their well-being and is an important source for many natural resources. So those 3 pillars are nested within each other. And I think this is a very comprehensive and pragmatic approach to try and promote the conservation of this region as a whole. As we said, we want to champion Saharan biodiversity. Again, these areas are not empty, they're not deserted. They are very, very special and quite unique. And we need to work with other partners to advocate for support and promote conservation and raise awareness, biodiversity conservation within this massive landscape, and make sure that is focused on the relevant conservation outcomes and outputs that we desire. We need to also contribute our technical knowledge on a much broader basis about aspiring conservation efforts and seeing what can be done in other parts of the region as a whole. In terms of landscapes, we want to contribute to the effective management of protected areas and outstanding landscapes, ensuring that the wildlife populations thrive and that people tangibly benefit from this improved management. We'll work on developing a model of cooperative management of protected areas to integrate the needs of pastoral peoples into the management and the use of the environment, and trying to mitigate some of the more modern threats that have come about in recent times. We also want to wholeheartedly adopt the One Health approach, looking at human, livestock and animal health and environmental health as an integrated approach. And also, as we've seen so successfully from our partnerships with Afrique Cœur and SFRO, providing humanitarian assistance to pastoralists and communities in remote areas in Niger has had remarkable results, but also represents a very key way to communicate with community members directly and promote the importance of sound environmental practices. Our species conservation is, again, what was our founding principle, and our long-term goal was always to halt and reverse the decline of wildlife in the Sahel and the Sahara, and the habitats required to support them. We've been working on iconic species, especially in partnership with our scientific and technical partners. That's especially Fossil Rim, St. Louis Zoo, SCBI, and ZSL in UK. And we've focused on reintroduction and reinforcement. The reason I put this picture up is that is the first wild-born addax in Wadi Rum, Wadi Hashim, since the first group of addax were released back into the wild in November 2019. And I just think it's an adorable picture. We need to make sure that these actions are closely monitored, and which is what we have been able to do with these inputs and the data management from the satellite collars. We've also hit a threshold now where the monitoring has switched from being individually based to being more of a population scale. So last November, in partnership with ZSL and Missionary Air Fellowship, we were able to undertake an aerial count of the core zone of the Wadi Rum, Wadi Hashim Game Reserve to try and get an estimate of the numbers of wildlife present. That marks a significant shift in approach from individual to population, and that I think is the best indication of success. During that aerial count, we actually saw this site, which was a group of 61 scimitar addax wild free living in Wadi Rum, Wadi Hashim, which I feel is a sight to behold, and it really is a sign of the fact that we have achieved rewilding in terms of restoring the natural balance of the scimitar oryx. There's still a lot to go, but this is on its own a remarkable achievement, and I really need to acknowledge the contributions from Environment Abu Dhabi to achieve this. This was their flagship project in Chad. It's a remarkable achievement. The team on the ground doing an incredible job, and it is something that we should all be very, very proud of. As I said, we don't do any of this alone, and this is just some pictures of our teams. You've heard presentations by Razak twice in the last few days. You also heard from Firma, who's laughing away in his white stripy t-shirt. On the top left is Bebe, our chauffeur in Niger, who is our first SaharaConservation employee way back when, and we can't do anything without him. He is our best ambassador and most effective representative to the communities. Below, we are in partnership with the coordinator for the reserve, Hamid Hatcha. I hope he's online. And Rashid Ibrahim has been involved in our EU-funded project for a very long time. On the top right, you can see us enjoying a delicious meal provided by Maimouna Ibrahim in Kele, where we have the captive ostrich breeding center. Just to look at some of the infrastructure that is required to achieve what we set out to do. This is a picture from a drone of the base camp in Wadi Rum, Wadi Hashim for the oryx reintroduction project. That has now progressed to include several other species, North African ostrich and also addax, but now a series of 4 enclosures that we are hoping to breed numbers of critically endangered dama gazelles to reintroduce into the wild. As I said, these enclosures, which you can see on the top, on the right-hand side, are very important for the whole operation, trying to make sure that the animals that are brought over can adapt to the local conditions before being released into the wild fully. The logistics required to do this are immense, and you can see John Newby here taking a picture of the crates being unloaded from the lorry after they've been brought over from Abu Dhabi. Again, there's a picture of the base camp in the top left, and on the bottom left is a picture of our office for the EU-funded Poroa project, which I'll happily talk more about. But I know that Violetta is going to be giving an update on that, or the Project Oryx later. Our greatest need at this moment, beyond the strategy, is Cessna 182. I can't express enough how vital this is. We are trying to operate in an area the size of Scotland, and we have realized probably a little too late that we really needed to raise money for an aeroplane for support. It's vital for security, it's vital for ecological monitoring, logistics, law enforcement, bringing in supplies for and also emergency situations. So this is something that we are reaching out to everybody that knows us and saying this is our most important need at the moment. We do have to be creative with this, because a lot of the donor commitments from more established multilateral, bilateral donors don't allow the flexibility to purchase this. So I'll happily answer questions. One of the things I did want to say was that the Sahara Conservation grew ostensibly a lot from the zoological community, but both in the States and in Europe. And we've got considerable support from these, but also incredible outreach. And we would like to make sure that we are able to collaborate with them as effectively as possible going forward. But over the course of time, we've actually been able to increase our support to some larger donors, the European Union, the World Bank, the Global Environment Facility, and again, Environment Abu Dhabi, the Convention on Migratory Species, and also IUCN are supporting us with some project support in recent times. We also make sure that we collaborate very closely with the government authorities in both Chad and Niger and Morocco. So that's very important. The main thing, to my mind, is that the Sahara and the Sahel are changing rapidly. And I think this is typified by this picture, which is of a nomadic caravan that we encountered at one stage. And John Newby went over to go and talk to the people, being able to speak in several dialects of Arabic, and was able to converse with them. And at one stage, the chap on the right holding the phone said, I've seen you on TV, can I take a selfie? And that gives you an indication of just how nomadic pastoral lifestyles have adapted, improved, and moved on. So I just thought this is a huge indication of how quickly the situation is changing and how quickly we need to act in order to ensure that these key areas for biodiversity conservation in the Sahel and the Sahara are conserved in perpetuity. With that, I'd like to say thank you to everybody who's been involved in preparing this strategy, especially Violetta Barrios, without whom would not be as robust as it is. And I would also like to thank all the members of the board who helped and the members of the in-country teams. And I look forward to implementing this strategy over the next several years. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your interest. And I'm happy to answer any questions that come through following this presentation.